It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon when Tanya finally arrived at the hotel after a long drive. The sky had been cloudy all day, and a light drizzle had started as she pulled into the parking lot. She had been looking forward to this getaway, even if it was just for one night, a chance to get away from work and clear her head. Tanya had been managing her own business for the last few years, and the stress had been piling up. A little time to relax and enjoy some peace seemed like just what she needed. The hotel was one of the finest in the area. Its tall, sleek building stood out against the gray sky, and the soft glow from the lights inside made it look even more inviting. As she stepped out of her car, she felt the cool breeze hit her face, making her grateful for the warmth that awaited her inside. When Tanya walked into the lobby, she was immediately taken by the elegance of the place. The walls were lined with polished wood, and there were large modern pieces of artwork hanging everywhere. The floor was a smooth marble that reflected the soft lighting overhead. Everything about the place screamed luxury. It was exactly what she had imagined when she booked the reservation. The front desk was just ahead, and she made her way over to it, glancing at the clock as she did. It was a little after 3 p.m. By the time she got checked in, she thought she'd have enough time to settle into her room, maybe grab a quick snack and then relax before dinner. A young woman, probably in her early 20s, stood behind the desk. She looked up from her computer screen as Tanya approached. "Good afternoon," Tanya said, offering a smile as she reached the counter. "Hi there," the receptionist replied, returning a polite but somewhat distracted smile. "How can I help you?" "I have a reservation under the name—" Tanya started, but before she could finish, the receptionist interrupted her. "Could you give me your ID and reservation details, please?" she asked, her voice friendly but with an edge of impatience. "Of course," Tanya replied, reaching into her bag to pull out her phone. She tapped the screen, quickly pulling up her booking confirmation. "Here you go," she said, placing the phone on the counter. The receptionist took the phone without a word and began to scan the details. Tanya watched her closely. The young woman's fingers moved quickly over the screen, but Tanya could sense that something was off. She was being polite, but the receptionist's body language seemed a little too stiff, a little too formal. Tanya's instincts told her that something wasn't right. After a moment of silent scanning, the receptionist looked up. There was a slight furrow in her brow. "I'm sorry, but it looks like your reservation isn't coming up here," she said, her tone turning more serious. "Are you sure you have the right hotel?" Tanya felt a small knot form in her stomach. "Yes, I'm sure," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "I made the reservation about a week ago. I have the confirmation email right here." The receptionist took the phone again and began to scroll through the details more slowly this time. Tanya watched as she read over the information, her expression unreadable. A few seconds passed, then the receptionist glanced up again, this time without the polite smile she had greeted Tanya with. "Sorry for the confusion," she said, a hint of frustration creeping into her voice. "But it seems we're fully booked for today. We don't have any rooms available." Tanya blinked, taken aback. "What do you mean?" "I have a reservation. It's confirmed. I even showed you the email." She was starting to feel uneasy now. The words were out, but she could tell the receptionist was still unsure of what to say next. "I understand," the receptionist said, but she didn't sound particularly understanding. "However, the system here shows no available rooms for your name. Maybe the reservation was canceled or something happened in the system. I'm afraid I can't help you at the moment." Tanya's heart sank. This wasn't making any sense. She glanced at the reception desk, wondering if someone else would step in. The receptionist, who now seemed more flustered than before, pressed a button under the counter, and a few moments later, another hotel staff member appeared, a man in his mid-40s. Wearing a sharp suit, approached the desk. He had a professional demeanor, but there was something in his eyes that gave Tanya the sense he wasn't particularly happy to be dealing with this situation. She felt a wave of frustration rise up inside her. The receptionist quickly explained the situation to him, repeating what she had told Tanya about the booking not showing up. The man, whose name Tanya didn't catch, nodded a few times as he listened, then turned to Tanya. "We're terribly sorry for the inconvenience," he said, his tone polite but unhelpful. "It looks like there's a mix-up with your reservation. Unfortunately, we're fully booked tonight, and I'm afraid we can't accommodate you." Tanya couldn't believe it. She checked her phone again. "But this is a mistake. I have the confirmation right here." And it's clearly stated I'm supposed to be staying tonight." The man didn't seem convinced. "I understand," he said, giving her a sympathetic look. "But as I said, we're fully booked. Perhaps you can try another hotel nearby." He offered a vague gesture toward the exit, as if sending her off was the simplest solution. Tanya stared at him for a moment, feeling the anger and confusion building up. She had been looking forward to this moment for weeks, and now everything was falling apart. The stress of the day, her work, and now this. All of it seemed to hit her at once. But she tried not to show it. She had been through much worse situations before, and she could handle this too. "I just need a room for the night," Tanya said, her voice calmer than she felt. "Can you please check again? Maybe talk to your manager or someone else?" The man sighed, clearly irritated by the back and forth. "Look, there's nothing more I can do for you right now. We're at full capacity. I'm sorry, but that's the situation." Tanya stood there speechless for a moment. She didn't know what to do next. It felt like everything was slipping out of her control. She had made the reservation weeks ago, and now she was standing here without a room to stay in the middle of the afternoon when she should have been settling in, not dealing with this. The lobby felt colder than before, and she wondered if everyone else around her was watching. Was she being judged? Tanya didn't want to make a scene, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Still, she forced a smile and thanked the man for his time before turning away from the desk. She didn't have any answers, but she couldn't leave just yet. She took a seat in one of the plush chairs nearby, trying to keep her emotions in check. For the moment, she would just wait. Maybe things would be sorted out soon, maybe not. But she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't leaving until she got the room she had booked. Tanya sat quietly in the chair near the hotel lobby, her fingers nervously tapping the armrest. The soft murmur of guests moving around her didn't help calm the unease inside her. Her mind kept replaying what had just happened at the front desk. She had done everything right. Made a reservation weeks ago, received confirmation, even double-checked the details the night before. Yet here she was, being told there was no room for her. She pulled out her phone again, scrolling through her email to find the confirmation message once more. The bright screen in the dim lobby gave her a small sense of comfort, a proof she could hold on to. The reservation was real. The date and time were correct. It even showed the payment had been processed. How could the hotel system say otherwise? Tanya sighed, feeling the frustration build up inside. She didn't want to believe this was just a simple mistake. It felt personal. She glanced around the lobby, noticing the other guests who were walking in and out. Most of them were being greeted with smiles and warm hellos. A family with 2 children was led toward the elevators by a cheerful bellhop. A businessman, dressed sharply in a suit, waved at the receptionist and seemed to be welcomed like an old friend. Tanya's gaze drifted back to the front desk, where the same young woman who had refused her service was now chatting casually with a colleague. The coldness of their earlier words still echoed in Tanya's mind. Trying to calm herself, Tanya decided to call her husband. He was supposed to arrive at the hotel later that afternoon, and she hoped he might be able to help. Her fingers hesitated for a moment before dialing his number. When he picked up, his familiar voice brought a brief smile to her face. "Hey," she said quietly, trying to keep her tone steady. "I'm having a problem here. The hotel says they don't have my reservation. They won't give me a room." There was a pause on the other end. "What, are you sure?" he asked, sounding surprised. "Yes, I showed them the confirmation. But they just said the hotel is full and that they can't help me. I don't know what to do." Her husband's voice grew calm but serious. "I'll be there in a couple of hours. Hang tight. Don't leave. I'll sort this out." She nodded, even though he couldn't see her. "Okay, I'll wait." After hanging up, Tanya felt a little less alone, but the tension still hung heavily around her. She returned to her seat and looked down at her hands. How had a simple hotel stay turned into this stressful situation? The more she thought about it, the more she realized it wasn't just about the missing reservation. Something deeper was at play. She remembered the way the receptionist had looked at her when she first arrived. Not angry, but wary, like she didn't expect Tanya to belong there. The way the manager had quickly dismissed her request even though she had proof. The fact that others around her were being treated with kindness and respect while she was left feeling invisible. The thought made Tanya's heart ache. She knew what this was. It wasn't the first time she had felt this way in her life, and unfortunately, she knew it wouldn't be the last. The feeling of being judged, pushed aside, not given the same chance as others. It was a quiet kind of pain, one that no one talked about out loud. She took a deep breath and decided to try one more time. Tanya stood up and walked back to the front desk, hoping that maybe, just maybe, someone else might listen. "Excuse me," she said softly. The receptionist looked up, surprise flashing in her eyes. "I'm still here. I'm still waiting for a room. Can someone else help me? Please." The young woman hesitated, then pressed a button under the desk. Another staff member appeared, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes. Tanya explained the situation again, showing her the confirmation on her phone. The woman listened carefully and then said, "I'm sorry for what happened. Let me check the system once more." After a few minutes of typing and searching, the woman's face remained serious. "I don't see a reservation under your name either, but I'll speak to the manager to see if anything can be done." Tanya nodded gratefully and returned to her seat. She felt a small spark of hope, but it was quickly overshadowed by doubt. What if the manager just told the other staff what to say? What if this was all just a waste of time? Hours passed slowly. Tanya watched the rain pick up outside the large windows, droplets sliding down the glass like slow-moving tears. She noticed a few hotel guests chatting and laughing, but she stayed quiet, wrapped in her thoughts. The comfortable chair beneath her felt less welcoming now. At one point, a bellhop came by and offered her a bottle of water with a kind smile. "Are you okay, ma'am?" he asked gently. Tanya smiled back, appreciating the small gesture. "I'll be fine. Thank you." The bellhop nodded and walked away. Tanya realized that kindness came in many forms. Sometimes it was soft words, sometimes a simple smile or a small act of caring. Those moments made the harder parts easier to bear. Her phone buzzed again, and it was her husband. "I'm close. Give me 10 minutes, his message read. She took a deep breath and looked toward the front doors. Soon she hoped someone who cared would walk through those doors, someone who would understand and make this right. As she waited, Tanya thought about what she would say when he arrived. She didn't want to be angry or upset. She just wanted the respect she deserved. She wanted to be seen as a person, not a problem. She wanted the same chance as everyone else. The hotel was full of people, some important, some just passing through. But Tanya felt alone. Alone in a place meant for rest and comfort. And yet, despite everything, she held on to hope. Hope that the story wasn't over yet. Tanya kept watching the front doors, her heart beating a little faster every time someone walked in. The lobby felt different now, less welcoming, almost cold. She sat quietly, trying not to draw attention but also feeling like everyone around her could see her struggle. The faces of the hotel staff were polite but distant, like they were following rules she didn't understand. As the minutes ticked by, Tanya thought about all the times she had faced unfair treatment. Not just at this hotel, but in other places too. She remembered the feeling of being invisible, of having to prove herself over and over again, even when she knew she was just as deserving as anyone else. It was exhausting. She looked around again, noticing a group of guests chatting happily near the elevators. They wore expensive clothes and laughed freely, their conversations filled with plans and promises for the weekend. Tanya felt a sharp pang of envy. She had wanted to be part of that world for just one night, to feel like she belonged somewhere that wasn't just about work or struggle. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from a friend checking in. Tanya quickly typed back, not wanting to share too much but feeling comforted that someone cared. "Still no room. Waiting for my husband to arrive. Hope he can help," she wrote. The reply came quickly. "Stay strong. You deserve better." That message made Tanya smile. Sometimes kindness from strangers could be a light in dark moments. She stood up and walked slowly toward the small coffee station near the lobby. She poured herself a cup of tea, the warmth soothing her hands as she held the cup. Taking a sip, she looked out the window at the rainy street. The water pooled on the pavement, reflecting the neon signs of nearby shops. It all felt so distant from the world inside the hotel, where she was stuck in a place that refused to acknowledge her. Tanya returned to her seat and took a deep breath. She tried to push the negative thoughts aside. There had to be a way out of this. She reminded herself that she was strong, that she had faced worse. But this was different. It wasn't about work or deadlines. It was about respect and dignity. She glanced back at the front desk again. The receptionist was busy with other guests, but Tanya caught her eye for a moment. The young woman looked away quickly as if uncomfortable. Tanya wondered what was going through her mind. Did she feel guilty? Or was she just doing her job, following orders without question? The door swung open and a man stepped inside. He was tall, with a calm but confident presence. He wore a suit that fit perfectly, and his eyes scanned the room quickly. Tanya's heart skipped a beat. She recognized him instantly, not just because of how he carried himself, but because she had told her husband what the hotel looked like earlier. This had to be him. The man walked over to the front desk and greeted the staff warmly. Tanya watched as smiles and nods were exchanged. The atmosphere shifted. The same people who had ignored her now looked attentive, even respectful. Tanya stayed where she was, watching quietly. The man didn't notice her at first. He was talking to the receptionist and the manager, his voice steady but firm. She could hear bits of their conversation. It seemed like they were discussing some problem, some issue that needed fixing. Then the man's eyes moved toward Tanya. Recognition dawned on his face. He stepped away from the desk and walked toward her. "Are you waiting for a room?" he asked, his voice gentle but direct. Tanya nodded, still unsure what to say. "I'm sorry for what happened," he said. "I wasn't aware of this situation until I arrived. Let's see how we can fix this." His presence felt different. It wasn't just the authority in his voice, but the kindness. For the first time since she arrived, Tanya felt like someone was truly listening. He asked her to explain what had happened, and she told him everything. How the staff had told her there was no reservation, how she had shown her confirmation, and how they still refused to give her a room. The man listened carefully, nodding as she spoke. When she finished, he said, "This shouldn't have happened. You have a right to be here." Tanya felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. She wanted to thank him but wasn't sure how. He smiled kindly. "I'll make sure you get a room right away. And I'll speak with the staff about this so it doesn't happen again." Within minutes, Tanya was led to the front desk again, this time by the man himself. The staff moved quickly to check her in, their earlier coldness replaced by hurried apologies and explanations that sounded hollow. As she followed the man down the hallway toward her room, Tanya felt a strange mix of emotions: relief, anger, and hope. Relief that this part of her day was finally ending, anger that it had to happen at all, and hope that maybe things could change. The room was beautiful, just as she had expected. Large windows looked out over the city, and the bed was soft and inviting. Tanya dropped her bags on the floor and sat on the edge of the bed, finally letting herself relax. Later, when her husband arrived, they talked quietly about what had happened. He promised to make sure no one else would be treated that way in the hotel. Tanya knew it wouldn't be easy, but for now, she was grateful to be somewhere that felt like home, even if just for a night. As she looked out the window at the city lights, Tanya realized that sometimes the hardest battles were the ones fought quietly, with patience and dignity, and that sometimes those battles were worth fighting, for yourself and for others who might come after. Tanya had just settled into her room when she heard the soft knock on the door. She opened it to find the man who had helped her at the front desk standing there, holding a folder. His expression was calm but serious. "I wanted to speak with you for a moment," he said quietly. "Is that all right?" Tanya nodded and stepped out into the hallway. The corridor was quiet except for the faint hum of air conditioning and distant voices from other guests. The man led her to a small lounge area nearby. They sat down, and for a moment there was silence. "I am very sorry about what happened today," he began. "I've looked into the situation and I want to be transparent with you." Tanya listened closely. She had questions, but she also wanted to hear his side. "It seems there was a mistake in our booking system," he said. "But more than that, I believe there was a misunderstanding among the staff about your reservation and who you are. I'm sorry for the way you were treated." Tanya's mind raced. It felt like an apology, but she wondered how deep the problem really was. She had seen the looks from the receptionist, felt the coldness from the manager. It wasn't just a mistake, it felt like something more. The man seemed to sense her thoughts. "I want you to know this is not how we want our guests to feel. We want everyone to be treated with respect and kindness." Tanya nodded slowly. She appreciated his words, but still felt hurt. "I've already taken steps," he continued. "The staff involved have been spoken to, and we are updating our training to make sure this never happens again. Your experience has made us look closely at how we treat everyone." Tanya sighed, feeling some of the tension ease. It was one thing to hear these words, but another to believe they would lead to real change. "Thank you," she said quietly. "That means a lot." The man smiled softly. If there is anything else I can do, please let me know. After he left, Tanya sat alone in the lounge for a while, thinking about everything. She realized that this hotel was not just a building or a business. It was a place where people's stories crossed paths, where kindness could change a day or even a life. Later, as she walked through the hotel halls, she noticed the staff now greeted her with polite smiles. The earlier coldness was gone, replaced by something warmer, more genuine. It made her feel seen. That evening, her husband arrived. He had come directly from a meeting and looked tired, but determined. When he saw Tanya, he pulled her into a hug. "I'm sorry you had to go through that," he said softly. "It's okay," Tanya replied, "but I hope this changes something for others." Together, they talked about what had happened and what needed to happen next. They agreed that the hotel should do more than just fix one mistake. It should make sure no one else felt invisible or unwelcome. The next morning, Tanya found a note slipped under her door. It was from the hotel manager, thanking her for her patience and understanding and promising ongoing improvements. It was a small gesture, but it meant a lot. As she packed to leave, Tanya felt a new sense of strength. She had faced unfairness and disappointment, but had come out stronger. She realized that sometimes the hardest part was to stay calm and keep believing in fairness. Stepping out of the hotel for the last time, Tanya looked back at the building. It was more than just a hotel now. It was a reminder of what respect and kindness should look like, and a challenge to make sure everyone gets a fair chance. Tanya stood outside the hotel, the morning sun casting long shadows on the sidewalk. She took a deep breath and looked up at the building one last time. The place that had caused her so much frustration and pain just days before now felt different. It was a place where things could change, because she had made sure of it. Her husband stood beside her, calm and steady. He squeezed her hand gently, sharing the quiet strength they both felt in that moment. It was a new beginning, not just for them, but for the hotel too. As they walked away, Tanya thought about everything she had learned through this experience. It wasn't just about being denied a room or feeling unwelcome. It was about the importance of being seen and heard. It was about the simple but powerful act of treating people with respect, no matter who they were or where they came from. She remembered the staff's cold looks, the words that didn't match the warmth she deserved, but she also remembered the kindness, the small smiles, the gentle voices, the moments when someone took a second to truly listen. Those moments gave her hope. Her husband had promised to make sure the hotel would be different now. He planned to hold meetings, train staff, and make the hotel a place where everyone felt safe and welcome. Tanya was proud of him, and she knew he was serious. They talked about how change wouldn't happen overnight, but every small step mattered. They wanted to create a culture of kindness that would spread beyond the hotel's walls, into the community and beyond. Tanya felt a new fire inside her. She wanted to help others who had faced the same unfair treatment. She wanted to tell her story so people could understand how important it was to stand up for themselves and others. As they got into the car, she looked out the window at the city waking up around her. There were people rushing to work, families heading out for the day, strangers passing by. Each one had a story just like hers. She realized that everyone deserved to be treated with dignity. Everyone deserved a chance. And sometimes it took courage to ask for it. The journey home was quiet but filled with hope. Tanya and her husband didn't know what the future would bring, but they knew they would face it together. They would fight for respect, kindness, and fairness wherever they went. And Tanya knew one thing for sure. No matter what happened, she would never let anyone make her feel invisible again. After the difficult day at the hotel, Tanya and her husband returned home, but the experience stayed with her. It wasn't just the inconvenience or the anger she felt. It was the feeling of being judged unfairly, treated differently for reasons she couldn't control. That feeling stayed with her deep inside. In the days that followed, Tanya found herself thinking about the hotel more than she expected. The man who owned the hotel, the same man who had come to her rescue, had promised changes. But she wondered how real those changes would be. Words could be easy to say, but real change took effort, patience, and sometimes courage. She talked with her husband about what she wanted to do next. "I don't want this to just end with us," she said one evening. "There are so many people who go through the same thing, but they don't speak up." Her husband nodded. "You're right. This could be bigger than just one night. Maybe we can find a way to help." Together they started to plan. Tanya thought about reaching out to community groups, to people who worked with fairness and equality. She wanted to share her story not for sympathy but to remind others that their voices mattered. She began writing her experience down, carefully choosing her words. She wanted it to be clear, honest, and relatable, not just about what had happened but about how it made her feel. The frustration, the fear, the hope. Sharing the story was harder than she thought. Tanya wasn't used to opening up in this way, but as she did, she received messages from strangers, people who had been through similar experiences. Some thanked her for speaking out. Others shared their own stories of being ignored, mistreated, or denied simple kindness. Each message reminded Tanya that she was not alone, and that even small voices could make a difference when they came together. Meanwhile, her husband worked at the hotel to keep the promise he made. He held meetings with the staff, encouraging them to understand why fairness and respect mattered. He listened to their concerns and challenges too, realizing that change wasn't simple. It required everyone to work together. Slowly, things began to shift. The hotel staff started to greet guests more warmly. Training sessions included lessons about kindness and awareness. Complaints were taken more seriously. The hotel became a place where people felt safer, not just because of the rules, but because of the way they were treated. Tanya visited the hotel from time to time. She saw the changes with her own eyes, and it gave her hope. She also saw how powerful kindness could be, how one person's courage could inspire others. Her experience taught her that standing up for yourself wasn't always easy, but it was important. It wasn't just about one person or one hotel. It was about creating a world where everyone could feel welcome and respected. Sometimes, Tanya still thought back to that first moment when she was denied service. It was painful to remember, but it was also a turning point. It showed her how strong she could be, how much she could influence change, and in the end, that made all the difference. Tanya woke up that morning feeling a mix of emotions. The days since the hotel incident had been busy and sometimes overwhelming, but she also felt a new sense of purpose. She wasn't just someone who had been denied a room. She was someone who had a story to tell, a story that could help others. After breakfast, she sat at her small desk by the window. The sunlight streamed in softly, making the room feel warm and hopeful. She opened her laptop and began to write again. This time, it wasn't just about the hotel or what had happened. She wrote about how important it was to speak up, even when it was hard. About how kindness could change lives. About how everyone deserved respect. As the words flowed, Tanya felt a calm come over her. Writing was like letting go of the weight she had been carrying. She hoped that by sharing her thoughts, she could connect with others who felt the same way. Later that day, Tanya's husband called her from the hotel. "I want you to come by," he said. "There's something I want to show you." Curious, Tanya agreed and made her way to the hotel. When she arrived, she noticed the difference immediately. The lobby was brighter, the staff friendlier. People moved with a lightness that hadn't been there before. Her husband met her near the entrance and smiled. "Come with me." He led her to a small room where a group of staff members were gathered. They were all listening attentively as he spoke. Tanya could see the change in their eyes, an openness she hadn't seen before. He turned to her and said, "This is part of the new training program we've started. It's about understanding respect and fairness not just as rules but as the heart of how we treat each other." Tanya felt proud and hopeful. This was more than just words on paper. It was real. As she watched the group, she thought about how important it was for people to learn empathy, to put themselves in someone else's shoes, to see beyond appearances and first impressions. After the meeting, Tanya walked through the hotel, noticing the small changes everywhere. The signs welcoming all guests, the staff greeting with genuine smiles, the way problems were handled quickly and kindly. She met a young woman who worked at the front desk. "I just wanted to say thank you," the woman said softly. "Your story helped me understand things better." Tanya smiled. "Thank you for listening." Walking outside later, Tanya felt a quiet joy. Change was hard, but it was possible. It started with one story, one voice, and grew from there. She knew there would still be challenges ahead. But she was ready. Ready to keep speaking up, to keep believing in kindness, and to help build a world where everyone could feel safe and welcome. As she looked at the city around her, buzzing with life and stories, Tanya felt a deep connection to it all. Everyone had a story, and every story mattered, and she was just getting started. Tanya's life had started to feel different, not just because of what had happened at the hotel, but because of the way she saw herself and the world around her. The experience had changed her in small but important ways. She realized that kindness wasn't just a feeling, it was something you had to practice every day. One morning, Tanya decided to visit a local community center. She had heard about a group there that worked to support people who faced unfair treatment. The group met weekly to share stories, offer advice, and help each other find strength. When Tanya arrived, she felt a little nervous. She wasn't sure what to expect. But the moment she walked in, she was greeted with warm smiles and open arms. The room was filled with people from many different backgrounds, each carrying their own experiences and struggles. Tanya listened as others shared their stories. Some talked about being turned away from places because of how they looked or where they came from. Others spoke about feeling invisible in their daily lives. Tanya felt a connection with every word. When it was her turn, she spoke about the hotel, the moment she was denied service, the frustration, the fear, and then the hope that came when her husband arrived. She talked about how important it was to stand up even when it was hard, and how kindness could change everything. The group listened quietly, some nodding in understanding. After she finished, a woman came forward and said, "Thank you for sharing. Your story reminds us all that we are not alone, and that we can make a difference." That evening, Tanya left the community center feeling lighter. She had found a place where her story mattered, where people supported each other in making the world a better place. Back at home, Tanya and her husband talked about how they could do more. They discussed ways to help others speak up and find their voices. They thought about hosting workshops, writing articles, and even starting a support group at the hotel. The next weeks were busy but rewarding. Tanya helped organize events where people could share their experiences and learn how to ask for respect without fear. Her husband worked to make the hotel a symbol of change in the community. Tanya's story began to spread. People reached out, thanking her for her courage and honesty. Some shared their own struggles, inspired to stand up and speak out. Through it all, Tanya learned that change wasn't about one big moment. It was about many small steps. It was about listening, understanding, and caring for each other. One afternoon, Tanya received a letter from a guest who had stayed at the hotel recently. The guest wrote about feeling welcomed and respected for the first time in a long time. The letter said, "Your story and your courage have made a difference. Thank you for being a light." Tanya smiled as she read the words. It was proof that even the hardest experiences could lead to something good. She thought about how far she had come, from feeling invisible and denied, to being a voice for kindness and change. She knew the journey wasn't over, but she was ready for whatever came next. Looking out the window, Tanya saw the city buzzing with life. People walked by, each carrying their own stories. She felt grateful to be part of that flow, to be one of many voices working to make the world a little kinder. And she believed that as long as people kept listening and caring, there was hope for a better tomorrow. After months of working with the community and the hotel staff, Tanya noticed how much had changed around her. The hotel was no longer just a place to stay. It had become a symbol of hope and respect. Guests arrived to smiles and kindness, and the staff seemed proud of the place they worked. It felt different in a good way. One day, Tanya received an invitation to speak at a local event about her experience and the changes she helped inspire. At first, she felt nervous. Speaking in front of a crowd was not something she had ever imagined doing, but she also knew this was important. It was a chance to share her story and encourage others to stand up for what was right. On the day of the event, Tanya arrived early. The room filled with people from all walks of life. Some were community leaders, others were just regular folks interested in hearing what she had to say. She took a deep breath, thinking about the journey she had been on. When it was her turn, she stepped to the microphone and began to speak. She talked about the moment she was denied service at the hotel, the feelings of shame and hurt that came with it, and how her husband's arrival had changed everything. But she didn't stop there. She shared how the hotel became a place of change, how kindness and respect had started to spread beyond the walls. As she spoke, she looked out at the faces in the audience. Some looked surprised, others thoughtful. She realized how many people had faced similar moments of unfairness and invisibility. Tanya finished her speech with a simple message. We all deserve respect, no matter who we are or where we come from. When we stand together and speak out, we can change the world. After the event, many people came up to her, thanking her for her courage and honesty. Some shared their own stories of being treated unfairly. Tanya listened with care, feeling a deep connection with each person. One man told her, "Your story gives me hope. I've faced many doors closed in my face, but hearing you makes me want to keep trying." A woman said, "We need more voices like yours. You remind us all to be kind and to stand up when we see injustice." Tanya realized that her voice had become more powerful than she ever imagined. It wasn't just about one hotel or one night anymore. It was about the way people treated each other every day. That night, as she sat with her husband, she felt tired but happy. They talked about how far they had come and how much work was still ahead. "We've made a difference," her husband said. "But this is just the beginning." Tanya nodded. She knew he was right. There would always be challenges and hard moments. But with each step, with every story shared, the world could grow kinder. In the weeks that followed, Tanya and her husband continued to work with community groups and the hotel staff. They hosted workshops about respect, fairness, and kindness. They invited guests to share their experiences and helped the hotel become a leader in welcoming everyone equally. Sometimes, Tanya still thought back to the moment she was denied service. It hurt to remember, but it also reminded her how important it was to keep fighting for change. Her story became a reminder to many that no one should ever feel invisible or unwanted. It showed that even in the hardest moments, kindness could be found and could grow. Tanya knew her journey was far from over, but she also knew she wasn't alone. There were many others ready to stand up, speak out, and build a better future. As she looked forward, Tanya felt hope. Hope that kindness and respect would continue to spread. One story, one person, and one moment at a time. Tanya sat quietly in her favorite chair by the window, looking out at the world moving around her. She thought about everything that had happened over the past months. The moment she was denied service, the struggle, the hope, and the change. It was a long journey, one she hadn't expected to take. But it had taught her a lot about strength, kindness, and the power of standing up. Her husband joined her, carrying 2 cups of tea. They sat together in comfortable silence for a moment. Then he said softly, "I'm proud of you." Tanya smiled, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the tea. "We both did this," she said, "together." Their journey wasn't just about one hotel or one story. It had become something bigger, a movement toward kindness and fairness in their community. They talked about the changes at the hotel. The staff now greeted every guest with a smile. The training sessions continued, teaching everyone the importance of respect. Guests often left notes thanking the hotel for being welcoming and kind. More than that, Tanya had seen the impact beyond the hotel walls. The community center where she had shared her story became a place where people felt safe to speak up. The workshops they organized helped others find their voices too. One afternoon, Tanya received a message from a young woman who had attended one of the workshops. She wrote, "Thank you for helping me see that I matter. Your story gave me the courage to speak up." Tanya felt a deep joy reading those words. It reminded her that the hardest moments could lead to the most beautiful changes. Life wasn't perfect, of course. There were still days when Tanya felt tired or frustrated. Change took time, and sometimes people forgot the lessons they had learned. But she knew that kindness and respect were worth fighting for. She and her husband continued to work side by side, planning new ways to support their community. They dreamed of a future where no one would feel invisible or unimportant. One day, Tanya visited the hotel again. She walked through the lobby, watching guests smile and staff work together. It felt like a place transformed, not just by rules or policies, but by the hearts of the people who cared. As she left, she thought about how far they had come and how far they still could go. She knew that every story mattered and every person deserved respect. Tanya had learned that courage wasn't about never feeling afraid. It was about standing up even when you were. It was about believing in kindness and choosing to act with love. And with that belief, she was ready for whatever came next. Tanya found herself thinking more and more about how stories have power. Not just her story, but the stories of everyone around her. Each person carried memories, both happy and painful, that shaped who they were. Sometimes it was the stories people didn't tell that held the most weight, the ones kept inside, hidden by fear or shame. She remembered how it had felt to be refused service at the hotel, the sting of being invisible, the confusion and then the shock when her husband arrived, the owner, and everything changed. That moment had opened her eyes to the importance of speaking up, of being seen and heard. Now Tanya wanted to help others find their voices too. She began to think about how she could make sharing stories easier and safer. The community groups and workshops had been a start, but she wanted something bigger, something that could reach more people. She and her husband began brainstorming ideas. What if they created a space, a real place where people could come together and share their stories? A place filled with support and understanding where no one would be judged or turned away. They imagined a small center in their town, open to anyone who needed it. People could come to listen or to speak. There would be counselors, volunteers, and workshops. The goal was simple: to build connection and healing through the power of stories. It wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges: finding funding, organizing events, spreading the word. But Tanya felt a strong pull toward making it happen. She believed in the goodness of people and the healing that comes from being heard. While working on the plan, Tanya continued visiting the hotel. She loved seeing the changes there, the staff's genuine smiles, the way they handled problems with kindness and respect. Guests were happier too, and many left notes sharing their appreciation. One day, a guest stopped Tanya to say, "Thank you for everything you've done. It feels different here now. You made this place better." Those words touched Tanya deeply. She thought about how one moment, the night she was denied service, had turned into so much more. It had become a story of hope and change, not just for her, but for many. As the weeks went by, Tanya and her husband worked tirelessly to turn their idea for the community center into reality. They reached out to local leaders, gathered support, and slowly began raising funds. The process was slow and sometimes frustrating, but each small victory felt like a step closer to their dream. Along the way, Tanya met many people with powerful stories. Some were difficult to hear, filled with pain and struggle, but they all shared a common thread: the desire to be seen and understood. Tanya learned that listening was as important as speaking. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is your attention and your heart. One evening, after a long day of meetings and planning, Tanya sat down with her husband and said, "This is more than just a project now. It's a mission. It's about making sure no one ever feels invisible like I did." Her husband nodded, "And it will take time. But we're not alone." Tanya smiled, feeling hopeful. Together, they would keep moving forward. The community center finally opened a few months later. On the first day, people arrived hesitantly, unsure of what to expect. But soon the room filled with stories, laughter, tears, and connection. Tanya stood quietly, watching as strangers became friends, as silence was replaced by understanding. She knew this was only the beginning. The journey toward kindness and respect was ongoing, but every story shared here would make the world a little better. And Tanya was ready to listen, to share, and to keep believing in the power of human connection. The community center had been open for a few months now. Tanya often spent time there, watching how the place had begun to grow into something special. People came in from all over, some looking for a place to talk, others just wanting to listen. The center was becoming a safe space where stories were shared, friendships formed, and healing began. Tanya felt a deep sense of satisfaction watching the change unfold. She remembered the days when she felt invisible, when being denied service at the hotel had left her feeling small and powerless. Now she was part of something bigger, something that helped others feel seen and valued. One afternoon, a woman came to the center looking tired and nervous. She had been hesitant to come, afraid her story wouldn't matter. Tanya welcomed her with a warm smile and offered her a seat. Slowly, the woman began to speak about the struggles she faced, how she had been judged and ignored in many places, how she had learned to stay quiet for fear of being rejected. Tanya listened carefully, nodding in understanding. When the woman finished, she looked at Tanya with tears in her eyes. "Thank you for listening," she said softly. "I didn't realize how much I needed to say it out loud." Tanya felt the familiar warmth of connection. She knew that sometimes just being heard was the first step toward healing. At the hotel, things continued to improve. The staff had embraced the training, and were proud of the welcoming environment they had created. Guests often commented on the kindness they experienced, and the hotel's reputation grew. One day, Tanya's husband invited her to a meeting with some local business owners. They wanted to learn from the hotel's example and create similar programs in their own places. Tanya was surprised but pleased. It showed that change could spread when people were willing to listen and learn. The meeting was filled with ideas and hope. Tanya shared the story of the hotel and the community center, emphasizing that respect and kindness were the foundation of any successful business. She also reminded everyone that change took time and effort. It wasn't about quick fixes, but about consistent care for others. After the meeting, Tanya felt inspired. She realized that her journey was touching many lives, far beyond what she had imagined. Back at the center, Tanya helped organize an event called Stories of Strength. People were invited to share moments when they had overcome challenges or found hope in difficult times. The event was powerful. Stories of courage and kindness filled the room. People who had never spoken in public before found their voices, and those listening were moved deeply. Tanya felt proud of the community they were building, a community based on empathy, respect, and support. One evening, as she walked home, Tanya thought about how far she had come. The pain of being denied service still lingered, but it was now a part of a bigger story, one of resilience and change. She knew that not everyone would understand or agree with her, and that sometimes the road ahead would be hard. But she also knew that kindness had the power to break down walls and build bridges. At home, Tanya and her husband talked about the future. They dreamed of expanding the center, reaching more people, and continuing the work they had started. They knew the journey was far from over, but they were ready for the challenges ahead. Tanya felt a deep sense of peace as she looked out the window. The world outside was full of stories, some happy, some sad, but all important, and she was determined to keep listening, learning, and sharing, because every story mattered. Tanya had learned a lot over the past months. She understood now that change didn't come all at once. It came slowly with effort and patience, one step at a time. She often thought about how many people around her had stories like hers, stories of being treated unfairly or made to feel small. But she also saw how many were ready to listen, to help, and to make a difference. The community center was growing. More people came through its doors, some curious, some seeking comfort. The staff and volunteers worked hard to make sure everyone felt welcome. They created groups for different needs, some for those dealing with sadness or loss, others for people looking to build confidence and skills. Each group shared a common goal: to support and uplift one another. Tanya found joy in watching people connect. She saw friendships form and people gain hope. She knew that no one had to face life's struggles alone. At the hotel, the changes were clear too. The staff had become a team, proud of the respectful environment they had built. Tanya's husband was involved in new projects that brought the hotel closer to the community. They hosted events and fundraisers, and even partnered with local schools to teach young people about kindness and respect. One day, Tanya received an invitation to speak at a regional conference on community building. It was a big honor, but it also made her nervous. Speaking to a large group of people was not something she was used to. Still, she knew this was an opportunity to share what she had learned and inspire others. When the day arrived, Tanya stood in front of the crowd, her heart beating fast. She began by telling her story, the moment she was denied service at the hotel, the pain she felt, and the hope that followed when her husband arrived. She spoke about the power of kindness and how a single act could change everything. As she spoke, she saw faces in the audience nodding, some smiling, some with tears. Tanya realized that many had felt the same pain she had felt. She told them about the community center, the hotel's changes, and how people could come together to make a difference. At the end of her speech, the room filled with applause. Many came forward to thank her and ask questions. Tanya felt a sense of pride and purpose she had never known before. Back home, Tanya and her husband talked about the conference. They dreamed of expanding their work, reaching more towns and cities. They believed that kindness could spread far beyond their small community. Life wasn't always easy. Sometimes Tanya felt overwhelmed by the challenges ahead. But she remembered the faces of the people she had met, people who were stronger because they had been heard. She knew that every small step mattered. One evening, Tanya walked through the town square, watching families and friends enjoy the warm evening. Children laughed as they played, and neighbors greeted each other with smiles. It was a scene filled with simple happiness, but Tanya knew it was also a sign of change. She thought about how a moment of pain had grown into something powerful, something that brought people together. Tanya felt grateful for the people who had supported her, for the kindness she had received, and for the chance to help others. She believed that as long as people kept listening and caring, the world could become a better place, one story at a time. And with that belief, Tanya was ready to keep moving forward, knowing that the journey was far from over but filled with hope.